Speaksies.
Our guest is one of my favorite comedians working right now. You might have seen him on Comedy Central, Jimmy Kimmel Live, one of the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. If you're in Nashville, where he currently resides, he's a regular performer at the Grand Ole Opry. You can see him tomorrow night, Wednesday, November 11th, at Zany's Dusty Slade Grand Ole Comedy Show. That is, if you can get a ticket, sold out. Finally, you can hear him weekly on his podcast, We're Having a Good Time. Please welcome Dusty Slade to the program.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Dusty, thanks for joining us. And my first question is, are we going to have a good time?
Of course we're going to have a good time. We're always having a good time. You know, I like to tell people we're having a good time. I don't like to ask. You know, a lot of people will come out and they'll go, are we having a good time? Not me. I can't risk it. You know what I mean?
I love that. I did read that, and it's very smart.
You never want to ask people questions that you're not sure of the answer to. You just let them know how it's going.
Yeah.
That's like if you're on a date, you don't go, are you having fun? You go, this is great. We're having a lot of fun here.
Yeah. This is the best Applebee's I've ever been at, right?
Yes. Always. Never let them tell you. You always tell people how you feel.
Yeah, taking notes on this.
And how they feel.
So we have to ask everyone, how are things going with you in the vid? And especially as you're a tour comedian, how's that working out for you?
Honestly, it's been great for me. I mean, I was on the road so much that when I got shut down in March and April, I was like, actually, this is great. I mean, this is a nice break for me. And then I went back out in May. I went to Dallas in May. I did some shows. I think I might have been the only headliner in the country out in May. And I was like, I felt good. It was 25% capacity. I did a couple of weekends in May, a couple in June, and then the second shutdown came, and that one was a bit depressing because I was like, oh, I don't know if we're coming back.
Yeah.
I wanted to quit comedy. I was already deciding I was going to do something new. And then I got to go back in mid-August to Rhode Island. And when I came off stage, I had my body was like buzzing. You know, I felt like I was on drugs, and I was like, man, this is awesome. And so I love comedy. So I'm happy to be back.
Well, I have to follow up on that. Why were you thinking about quitting comedy, if you don't mind me asking? It seems like you're doing great.
I know. That's just what the unsurety does. Like, I was like, I was in this place where I'm like, if we're not going to be allowed to do comedy again, I got to do something. I can't just.
Right.
Yeah.
The first 2 months was an amazing break. I enjoyed. Right. The second one was like, I'm bored. I'm going to have to get some kind of job. Fortunately for me, you know, I had been saving money. So it wasn't like a money thing. It was like just outright, like, I can't be this bored.
Right. That makes sense.
I need some purpose.
Yeah.
The first quarantine, I set up all my bird feeder. I got into birds, you know, I set up all my bird feeders, my bird houses, traps, you know what I mean? I got it out there, and I was into it. And you know, I planted plants, I grew squash, I grew potatoes. I was like, I stood out my back door looking at birds for so long. My neighbor put up an 8-foot privacy.
Yeah. Well, I got a bird feeder too. And it's something. And then I heard someone say it's actually really good for you to just spend time just looking at birds or nature or whatever. It's like its own therapy or something. Yeah. So
it's so great. And my neighbor did put up an 8-foot privacy fence. And it's like, in my neighborhood, it's all 6 foot, except just behind my house is an extra 2 feet. Yeah. And I wasn't looking in his windows, you know, but birds are small, right? So
that's right.
I'd be out there looking, and every once in a while I'd see a little movement in his windows, you know, so I get it. And he told me one day, he's like, I'm about to get a new fence. After that, you won't have to look at me anymore. And I was trying to be all fun with him. And I was like, hey, but I like looking at you. And that fence went up quick. He's like, I got a family to protect.
Yeah. Well, you kept the economy going during the shutdown. So good job.
Yeah, totally. Fence builders needed something to do too, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So the subject of our show tonight is the Iron Bowl. We looked at the history of Alabama and Auburn and some of the big terms that go with that. So we want to talk to you a little bit about your personal connection to the Alabama-Auburn rivalry.
Well, I grew up in a town in Alabama called Opelika, right next to Auburn. So where I come from, you're either an Alabama fan or you went to college, but I didn't go to college, so roll tide, you know what I mean? And that's my favorite joke. I like that joke. My parents are divorced. They divorced when I was 2. My dad is a diehard Alabama fan. My mom is a diehard Auburn fan. And that's what my mom says all the time. She goes, oh, those Alabama fans, they didn't even go to that school, And the funny thing is, my mom also didn't go to Auburn,
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you do see that with a lot of teams. In fact, I'm wearing a University of Kentucky hat, and I didn't go there, but I'm ashamed of my college football team, and my family's from Kentucky, so it's the same sort of deal. Kind of
you can be a fan totally, but this is what gets me is the people that go, "We beat you, we beat you," and it's like, well, they beat it, they beat them,
right?
Yeah,
I didn't get beat, and you didn't win,
right.
That is true. I take credit when we win, but not when we lose. That's see, I say we, but
I say all these things, but if that's how you want to be, I don't care. You can be a we won. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Don't bother me.
The Louisville UK rivalry gets a little heated and people get kind of ugly to each other. I assume it's the same with Auburn, Alabama. Did you see that, or was it more? We talked in the show a little bit about is it in good? What is it in good spirits or whatever, or is it hateful?
It depends on the people, but I feel like it's mostly hateful. And all right, so my dad and he has a friend, and they watch the Alabama game together every time that they can, which is multiple games a season. Once in a while, one of them has something to do, but they sit. My friend, my dad's friend, he looks like Sam Elliott from any Sam Elliott movie.
Yeah.
Tall guy, big mustache. He drinks beer all the time. He has a whole ritual. He brings a case of beer over. He puts one beer in the freezer, the rest in the fridge. He drinks one. And then when he goes to get his new beer, he takes that one out of the freezer, puts a new one in the freezer, and then drinks that one. Right? He has a whole ritual. And they love to watch the game. They're both very nice people. But my dad had a guy over one time that was just hunting on the land, and he was an Auburn fan. So he just stopped in for a minute in between, hunting. He's like, I'm about to go back out to the woods, but he sat down and watched the game, and Auburn scored, and the guy started cheering, and my dad's friend was like, oh, I'm leaving. And he left, and they were like, hey, I'm about to leave. I'm about to get out of here. He goes, nah, I done made up my mind now. And he left, and he went and sat in his truck at his house and listened to the game on the radio.
I love the spitefulness of that. Just the pure bitterness, I guess.
Yeah, he would rather listen to it on the radio than sit around that guy for 1 second. And I like Alabama. That's really the team I pull for more often. I have a weird thing. People hate it. But I'm just like, for me, I'm like, listen, I don't live in Alabama anymore. I like to see a team from Alabama win. So if Auburn is in the national championship, I'm going to pull for them. Right. Ultimately, I want Alabama to do it. But if it's got to be Auburn, hey, I'm there to cheer. But I don't like watching Alabama with Alabama fans unless it's my dad. I don't, because they're so cocky and they're so and I'm just like, we're not really out there doing anything. Like, they're just so hateful. They hate the other team. And I don't care if people hate the other team, but it's hard for me to cheer for the team that I'm like a underdog kind of fan at heart, except for Alabama.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I just feel like Alabama as a state is the underdog. So I want us to win everything.
Well, I can't believe I keep bringing up Kentucky, but it's a similar thing. It's like with Kentucky basketball. I'm not saying that's all you got, Kentucky. I mean, there's bourbon, there's other stuff.
There's horses.
There's a lot, but
some great comedy clubs. Well, at least one that I know about is really great.
Yeah, but there is a thing of maybe you feel like there you go. So you should be let's get this guy on the board of tourism for Kentucky. That's what we need to do. But but it's like you want your state, you want that state to show up well in the thing they are known for. If you're in California, maybe you don't care as much, or New York. I mean, how many great New York football teams,
right?
College teams, do you know?
Reminds me of
Totally.
like I'm trying to explain to my daughter, like the Indian kid in her class probably really didn't grow up in Boston and hasn't been like a lifelong Patriots fan. Maybe they're bandwagoning a little bit. It's kind of tough to root for them. There's no underdog, even though now I guess they might be.
You never know.
You never know.
But yeah, I mean, my sister lived in Montgomery for a while. She told me that she read about a story where a girl shot and killed another girl because she wasn't mad enough about the Alabama loss. Like, she wasn't even happy. She wasn't mad enough.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And then, there was the guy, now, I don't want to step on any other questions, but,
go for it.
In Auburn, there is these, there's the oak trees that were out there, like 200-year-old oak trees. And that after, I grew up right next to Auburn. So I used to go to Auburn all the time. In high school, Auburn was our rival, So, but it's like they had these trees, and after every football game, when they would win the game, they would roll the trees. They would throw toilet paper in the trees. And it was just this great thing. But this one time when Cam Newton played at Auburn, apparently someone went to the Alabama Stadium and put a Cam Newton jersey on the Bear Bryant statue.
Ooh.
And so this guy, I was listening to the Paul Feinbaum show. I don't know if you know that show, but it used to be the best. I haven't listened in a long time, but it used to be my favorite show. And this guy called in. I was listening when he called in. He was like, I poisoned those trees down there.
Oh, no.
And he did. This guy went down and put, 2,4-D or whatever in the ground and killed these 200-year-old oak trees. He did some jail time for it.
Yeah. I was going to say, that sounds like a crime. Holy cow.
So then they put new ones back.
Yeah.
And they brought in new ones, planted them in like, fairly good-sized trees, and they rolled them again one night. They weren't supposed to, but the students rolled them. And then some guy walks by and lights one of them on fire.
Oh, my God.
So it died. So, they've had a lot of struggle with the trees.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, I also like the fact, I like when adults are involved in this stuff. It's one thing when you're, I was passionate about sports when I was a kid, but then I love the idea of like a 40-year-old guy, killing trees.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Probably older than 40, honestly.
Right.
And the one time, those car flags that you put on the back that, my mom used to rock those 2 Auburn flags all the time.
Oh.
My mom's Auburn, win or lose. She's about tired of Gus Malzahn, but she's with them win or lose. And one game, we used to have season tickets. We used to go see Auburn play all the time, which is, I guess it just shows that I'm just, maybe I'm a bandwagon rider too, that my mom did so much to make me an Auburn fan. And I'm like, no, I like Alabama. But I think there's a bond between me and my dad. You know what I mean? So we had season tickets. We were down there. We went to one Alabama-Auburn game. This is in the 90s, Terry Bowden days. And somebody broke both of our flags off the car during the game.
Uncalled for, man.
Yeah.
That's brutal.
I have a friend from – I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's it.
I have a friend from Pittsburgh that when Pitt and West Virginia used to play, he would go down to West Virginia to see the games, but he had to strip his car of everything. He had to make it look like a neutral car because it would be broken or lit on fire.
Oh, yeah.
That's West Virginia. Everything could be lit on fire at any time.
Yeah. Yeah, I have a picture. If I can't find it on my phone, I'm going to go and I'm just going to show you, even though this is mostly an audio podcast, you said, I want to show you and I'm thinking this was probably 1983. And I was looking up 83 and they were saying that was one of the best Iron Bowls ever. And we weren't at the game, but Auburn won. So if Auburn didn't win in 83, then that's not when it was. But my mom was married to my dad at the time and wanted to, she wanted to go down there. She didn't have tickets to the game, but after Auburn won, I think Alabama had won for 10 years in a row. And then Auburn had Bo Jackson. So it might've been 82. Anyway, I was really young. And so she went down to Toomer's Corner where they roll. And, she took me. And in this picture, you can see the toilet paper in my hair, from where they roll it. But that's
awesome.
Yeah, so there we are. My mom's got the classic Auburn hat on, and it really shows the whole two mascot thing. I mean, the hat, there's an eagle, and on the shirt it says Tigers. But I mean,
I love it. That's so great. Thanks for showing us that.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
And my dad has, he has a pool, and he has this pool house is what it used to be when me and my stepbrothers were growing up.
Mhm.
But now it's his Alabama room, right? So everything is just decked out Alabama. There's no organization to it. He just throws stuff on the wall, but it's just littered with stuff, newspaper clippings, and he's got an old rusty fridge in there full of a bunch of Cokes. And it's just, and then there's no heat out there. They'll have the, what is it? The gas tanks that you put on a grill, propane tanks.
Propane, yeah.
Yeah. And then I have that little heater on there. And
that's good stuff though.
That's a manly room. That's the way it should be.
I bet it smelled good in there too.
Oh, it smells like man.
it does smell good.
Man.
Yeah.
What is the smell of man?
There's
spilled
beef
beer and propane.
spilled beer. Yeah.
Yeah. And wings, chewing tobacco, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's a bathroom in there, but they usually go outside to pee anyway.
Oh, there's nothing better than peeing in your own backyard or your own yard.
I love to pee outside. There used to be this trail of ants outside of my house, and I like to pee those ants right off the wall. They would come back, I'd pee them right off the wall, and then they'd be right back the next time I went out there. It's like they were into it. You know what I mean?
You need to work that into your act of tell people they're having a good time and conclude with the benefits of urinating outside. Because it's true. There's something like reclaiming your land. And now that you have that 8-foot fence in your backyard, you can do it a whole lot more.
Yeah.
Maybe I should close with that. I used to talk about peeing on ants, and I felt like I lost the audience a bit.
You won us back. You were losing us before you brought that up, and now we're hooked back in.
Okay,
so it
good.
worked.
I've rediscovered my love of peeing outside ever since I tried to fix my downstairs toilet. It was turned into a month-long project. My problem is I don't have a good privacy fence, so there's always a little of danger involved.
Oh yeah,
like, even at night, because you're like, do you ever do the mental gymnastics of would I be arrested? And then you do, well, no, nobody can see from here.
Yeah.
There's nothing, and then you go, well, I don't know. I could get arrested, and then by that time I'm done.
Sometimes if I'm out watering the grass, I'll turn my back to my neighbor in the middle of the daytime, and then I'll pee at the same time I'm watering, hoping that maybe they don't know I'm peeing.
I like the danger.
But I think there's a stance that anybody can see you from the back and go, that dude's peeing.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, what you have to do is you have to start just doing the stance while you're watering your plants. Yeah. But while you're not peeing, just lull the viewer into a false sense of security.
Yeah.
Too many people have cameras now. You know, they have these ring light cameras. I went to my neighbor's house who's across the street from me, and I asked him how he liked that. And he goes, well, it's really sensitive. And then he goes, we don't pick up anything you say. And I'm like,
oh no.
Okay, so you do then.
Dave, that means we've heard everything.
Yeah, and I get out on the front porch having cigars, and I talk all kinds of stuff. You know, I'm definitely...
Is there a worse feeling than talking, especially when you're like just kind of shooting the shit? Maybe you're talking a little bit of maybe something you shouldn't be talking about, and then you realize, oh no, I'm being listened to right now.
Oh yeah,
that's a terrible feeling, which I've had many times because I'm a big mouth. But
yeah, well, I feel like there's always something we shouldn't be talking about, and it's like, oh dang. Like the other day, my neighbor was like, I used to smoke a lot of cigars with him, a different guy, and he's like, oh, you haven't been over in a while. And I was like, oh, my wife won't let me have cigars as much. And then he's like, oh, she won't let you have cigars. I was like, nah. And then like he drives off, and I turn around and she's like right there. And I'm like, oh,
exactly. Right.
I was like, I know you just heard me tell him that, but
right. And but that's part of the deal, man. You gotta take the hit sometimes for anyway.
Especially with the wife has superpowers. Once the vows were stated, her hearing increased.
Yes.
And her ability to be everywhere at once happens. Right, honey?
That's true. If she popped up right now, that would be really
cool. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
It would be weird that she's at your house, but that's that's next year. Yeah. Sorry, let me hit my notes here. We do edit this a little bit, so I can take a pause. Or you have to edit it a little bit. Anything? I was going to keep you on the list.
Well, okay. So I had a question
for
Dusty. So I was listening to your last podcast, and I really related to something, which is where you started the podcast. You said, you know what? I just went on 20 minutes And then I started it over because I was losing my train of thought. Just, I don't know, talking about a guy milking dog or drinking dog milk or something. I'm like, whoa, where's that lost footage? When does that make an appearance? First of all, you can't tease us like that. But
and which neighbor was doing it?
Well, this was an old guy I used to go to church with, and that's a story that'll be fun. I mean, this is what happened. I went to this church retreat one time. I'll just tell you, if you don't mind. And,
please, I'd love to hear it.
And we went, it's just some men. I had just quit drinking, and I was trying to connect with some people that weren't drinking all the time.
Yeah.
And so I went on this church camping trip, just being a bunch of dudes, we're out there grilling up. I mean, there's a guy out there he knows how to cook everything. We're not roughing it out there. We're sleeping in tents, but we're eating better than I eat normally.
Right.
But we get, after a couple of days, no cell phones, you're just talking a lot. This guy brought up, what would you do for $1 million kind of thing? That kind of game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know what they're about to ask. This is a bunch of church folk. And I'm like, I had a job I hated, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't know. There's not much I wouldn't do for $1 million. And he said, would you eat a piece of poop the size of a fun-size Snickers bar? And I always say that I was relieved because I know for $1 million, I would eat a king-size dookie, And then, and I was like, yeah, of course I would. If it meant my boss selling pesticides would never get to yell at me again, yeah, I'm eating a fun-size piece of poop.
Absolutely.
But the guy he goes, no, he said, I would never defile my body that way. Right. And really put me in like a weird place. And I'm like, all right, dude, well, obviously you have a better life than me right now. So later on, though, they're talking and they start telling stories on each other. And they start because they're all friends. I'm new to the group.
Right.
So he starts telling a story on this guy who wouldn't defile his body and said one night they were sitting around their house and they had a dog out there that had just given birth to some puppies. Oh, and it was laying out there on the porch on its back and had those big dog nipples sticking up. And he was like, they were like, I dare you to get down and drink some of that milk out of that dog nipple.
Oh my gosh.
He goes, how much? And they ended up raising $20. So for $20, this guy got down and drank milk from a dog nipple.
Oh, that's so gross.
And I'm like, you wouldn't eat a piece of food for $1 million, but for $20, you're down here drinking dog milk?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I like that he tried to shame you after putting a hypothetical to you. And then it's like, I would never do that. But that is, I think the dog milk is way worse. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think, Steve?
I'm trying to think of how he made money off that because now he's done what's the smell stuff that everyone sells? I'm totally blanking.
Oh no, you mean
essential oils? Yeah, some sort of like dog essential oil.
Yeah, because we sometimes talk about who is the first guy to realize that deer urine would you could ingest it and it would do something for you or whatever so
yeah. I was never that into hunting. You know what I mean? Exactly. I could just not get a deer this time around. Once the grocery store closes down, if the supply chains break, I'll maybe drink some deer urine if it means I get to eat. You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly.
You maybe can edit that out. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, you know what? We're just the whole deer urine section. We're gonna.
I don't mind at all. I hated hunting. I don't hate killing animals. I don't want you to kill animals for no reason. My family, we killed deer, we ate them. But I was just not into the whole thing of hunting. We got to get up early in the morning. It's cold. We got to put on a bunch of camouflage. And then we just go sit. If there was a guarantee that a deer would come, I'm in. But I never saw a deer when I was
People
hunting.
love it, though. And that's the thing I don't really get either. But.
It's as a retired hunter. And by hunter, I mean somebody who would be left in a tree stand to have a nap for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
To get in the middle of nowhere, especially now as an adult, just to be away from everything's there's something about it. I see the appeal. Of course, you actually have to be able to use your weapon. And then I was always at the behest of my friend Boozy, who lives in a more rural area. One of my best friends from college, great guy. But I'm, sassy, silly boy, city boy with his bandana, and he would leave me up there, and then he'd go find all his cousins and uncles and like leave me there for like 4 extra hours, like after it was dark and the bears are starting to swarm on me. And I'm just having a flashback in front of you, Dusty. I'm
Wow,
sorry to even bring
Virginia,
all this
that's
up.
a whole different beast then. I mean, it's like there's deer in Alabama, but it's not a real concern.
Yeah.
Virginia, that's all. You got mountains up. That's a whole different deal. Like my concern is falling out of the tree stand. That's not a bear. And bears terrify me since I saw the movie Revenant. I was not afraid of bears. I don't know why, but I felt like they're not that big of a deal.
Right.
But after the Revenant, I'm like, oh no.
I still haven't watched it, but I will tell you, I was not ever afraid of bears. And I told Steve, I used to love to watch the live videos from Yellowstone Park. They do a stream of just the bears eating the salmon, you know. And and you know, we grew up with bears being depicted pretty friendly, like Yogi and Boo Boo and stuff. But Steve really turned me on.
I don't know if you can see my hashtag.
Oh, look at his
there.
hashtag. He's always loaded for bear because he wakes up every day
ready for a bear to attack me. It really scarred me.
He's very scared of bears.
Well, what happened? I mean, you say the bears were out, but like what happened?
Well, what actually happened was I was in Canada years ago. It was actually on my honeymoon up in Alberta.
Oh, so you were a real hunter. Like you were.
No.
Oh, okay.
No.
Oh, okay.
No, not at all.
Honeymoon. Okay.
These are two. I was not hunting in Alberta.
Okay. All right. Okay.
It was just Steve, his bandana.
Yeah. And my wife's regret of like, what did I get myself into? So we're in Alberta and we're at this resort. And it's April, and they have all these signs, and they're very, you know, it's Canada. So you're thinking it's going to be nice and kind of gentle about everything. And they basically say, if you see a bear, fight for your life because it's going to kill you and eat you because they're just coming out of hibernation. If they've come this close to you, it wasn't an accident. You're probably going to die, but try to hit it in the face or punch it in the nose. And I didn't even think of that before.
Wow.
And that's now all I think about.
So friendly Canadians giving him the speech about bears did such a good job that it not only scared him for life for bears, he's been spreading the gospel of bear fear ever since. And
whenever my daughter's scared of something, I tell her what you'd be really scared of: bears. Which is great until a bear gets loose one time and a lifetime of fear that she shoved down is going to erupt.
Yeah, I mean, and there's nothing like adding two fears of someone. Oh, you're afraid of this? Well, let me tell you what you should be afraid of. Right. Bears. You're afraid of wolves? Add bears to it. That's like during the pandemic in the beginning, we were watching the Weather Channel, and they were like, yeah, there's a pandemic. There's a lot of tornadoes. And another thing that's been happening is sinkholes. So they were like, if you're not afraid enough, just worry about the ground you're standing on disappearing.
Right. That trumps everything. Right.
Yeah. If the air doesn't get you or the tornado, it's the ground.
The ground will get you. Dusty, a theme we have on our show this year is that people are not as far apart politically or culturally as we believe the media makes us feel. As you're out on the road in front of fans, do you find that people are really as divided as the news and Instagram and Twitter makes it sound like?
I think absolutely not. I think that I travel all over the place. I mean, I go to the most conservative places, the most liberal places. I do, I don't want to say I do the same jokes to make myself seem like I never switch it up, but I don't cater material for an audience. I just go do jokes. And I mean, South Texas, Michigan, California. I mean, and I talk to people after the shows. Now, I don't hang out with a bunch of people, but we talk, and everybody seems happy. We're all having fun. We're laughing at the same things. Liberals and conservatives grew up in trailer parks too. Not all of them, obviously, but and it's like, I don't know. I feel like until you start talking about specific things, people laugh together, they hang together. And even when people disagree, like in person, I smoke cigars a lot, and I like to sit in cigar shops. Now, generally speaking, the normal cigar clientele leans conservative. But, if someone does disagree, it's just a conversation.
Yeah.
It's not a shouting match over the internet. And the internet, that's what happens. You could go on, you could see a post, and you could be like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And then the first comment is, you're such an idiot. And then they tell why they're such an idiot. And then the next comment is another person saying why that person's an idiot. And then you start reading and you're like, all these things kind of make sense to me. I'm like, what is the truth?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, in person, I agree with you. And I feel like you sit down and talk to somebody. It generally, I love those YouTube videos they do. I don't remember who does it, where they have people that are completely on different sides of the spectrum and they sit down and have a conversation and you watch it. It's like, yeah, that's pretty much how it normally goes. But when there's that barrier of the internet, it kind of messes things up.
We need to get people together that they can urinate in a backyard together.
Right.
Totally. And that's the interesting thing about the shutdown, right? Is like they're encouraging people not to hang out with each other. And the more we're around each other, the more we can see that we're like, we are the same. It's like, I have friends that I interact with. We could all hang out together at a party. And then I go on the internet and find out they all have different views and they seem to all hate people that have a different view than them. And I'm like, and I'll see both of them and I'm like, you guys were just hanging out. Like you just were having a good time with each other. And now you seem to hate each other.
Well, I miss live comedy and live music and all that stuff. And I mean, what do you think is going to happen? Are we ever going to have it like it used to be? I mean, you're hearing all these dire things like it'll never be the same. This is the new normal. What's your expert take on, I guess, with the comedy scene anyway?
I don't know. I mean, I it's hard to say. I mean, I kind of live like we already are back to normal. I don't know if I should say that, but I just have been around so many people since May doing shows. I mean, in May, when I was in Texas, people wanted to get their picture made with me. And I'm like, I'm just so honored that people come to my show that how am I going to be like, oh, no, I don't think so. And so I did it. And then the Sunday that I was flying home, I got worried that I was sick. Like my face started to feel hot. I was like, oh no. And the moment I got home, I was fine. And I've had several instances like that where I'm just like, my chest feels like it's tightening up. I'm like, oh no, now I got it. And then I just am fine. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like regardless of you seeing me eat that hot dog, I try to eat pretty healthy and I try to, take vitamins but I don't know. But I don't know if things will go back to normal. I mean, in some ways I see people totally being like, yeah, we're back to normal. Like you'll see, like I was in Chattanooga and it's like, you go into some place and it's like, they're like, put your mask on. And they're yelling at you and they're like, stand away from each other. And then the next minute there goes a pedal tavern by you on the street where people are drunk and sitting right across from each other yelling. So it's like, I feel like there's a portion of people that are like ready for it to be back right now.
Yeah.
And other people are like, I've still not left my house.
Yeah.
I don't know if that even gives any kind of opinion of what I think is going to happen.
Well, it's an unfair question because nobody knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You answered it.
Well, exactly. I think Dusty knows and he's holding it for himself, but that's okay. We understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I get dirty a lot. I don't wash my hands a lot. I've never been that kind of person. And I just feel like I've gotten a lot of germs and I just think my immune system's strong. I mean, I could be wrong. I could die tomorrow, but
I saw you went through that hot dog. I think you're strong.
Yeah.
You got that hot dog strength.
Thank you. Yes.
Dusty, I have one last question for you, and thank you very much for being here with us. And
I'm having a great time.
You a second to plug stuff too. So what is a misconception about Alabama, the state, that you'd like to address?
Well, it's hard to say, right? Because I'm always defending like Alabama and rednecks and stuff like that. And then, like one day I remember I was like on the internet, like defending some rednecks. And then I went to like a 4-way stop and I don't know what happened. We had a little confusion and this guy in this big truck rolls by and he's flipping me off. And I'm like, I was just defending you, and I don't know. I always like to think of it like the Neil Young, Leonard Skinner kind of battle, right? Like Neil Young wrote the song Southern Man, and then he wrote the song Alabama, which is slamming the South, slamming Alabama for, maybe, some things they deserve to be slammed for, right? And then Ronnie Van Zant writes a song, and his song is basically like, yeah, there's some stuff going on down here, but we're not all like this. we're jamming, we're having a good time too. And it's just like, I think the perception is that the South is just like Alabama is just backwards and hateful and just gross. And I'm like, it's some of the most beautiful country in the world. And I grew up, in a town with, we had Opelika is a pretty diverse town. I mean, my school was like, we were like half and half white and black. We had Opelika has a huge Korean population, and we had a lot of Mexican people. And it's just like, I don't know. I grew up around so many different kinds of people that we knew about racism, obviously, but we all got along just fine. I've been punched in the face by white people and black people. You know what I mean? And
Diversity hashtag.
yeah. So I don't know. I just feel like, I don't know, especially since I've traveled the country and I drive a lot. I love to drive. Whenever it makes sense, I'll drive as opposed to fly. And I go through towns all over the country where I'm like, growing up, I thought rednecks were below the Mason-Dixon line. And now I'm like, oh, outside of every city is redneck.
Yeah,
that's true.
And then even in New York City, like I would walk through Brooklyn and be like, oh man, they may live in one of the biggest cities, like the biggest city in America, but even Brooklyn itself would be one of the biggest cities if it were separate. But I'm like, they're total redneck. There's lawn chairs out here and like inside chairs that are outside on the patio. And they, I firmly believe that in China, there is someone that the rest of the Chinese people consider a redneck. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
I don't know. They're like, there's like a Chinese hillbilly out there somewhere and he's making moonshine and getting too loud. And the other people are like, oh, you know what I mean?
You do.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense.
That makes total
no,
sense.
it does.
And
Chinese
I'm just going to
hillbilly.
speculate what that looks like right now. I'm going to talk to my Chinese friends to see if I can figure out who that is. Do you have any friends that have like, really big tires on their truck or?
Yeah.
Exactly. There's no doubt that exists to some degree in every place there is. Like I was just telling a story earlier, like my dad lives on a farm. My mom lived in a trailer park growing up. And I was talking about this family that lived there and they lived in the trailer, in a trailer. And they were like, to me, they were poor. Right. And it's like when you live in a trailer park and there's other people that you're like, oh, they're poor. Like that's extreme. You know what I mean? You go to their house and you're like, oh, your parents don't care about you at all. And
they don't even have any ants to pee on.
Right. Exactly. So I'm like, even in the trailer park, I used to have a joke where I'd say I was the rich kid in the trailer park, because we had things like parents and a door, you know what I mean? And I said, I used to have this joke where I'd say I used to get called spoiled a lot in the trailer park. That's because I had the least amount of bruises. And that's because my dad only had one arm, right? And that's all made up in a joke, but
it's a good one.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So Dusty, what's next for you? Plug whatever you want. Where are you going to be?
Well, I'm all over the place, and my calendar really is full. I mean, in November, I got a couple of weeks off because of Thanksgiving and whatnot, but my calendar's full. My website is dustyslay.com, and I post a lot of videos on TikTok now, and I don't dance around and stuff like that. I just post stand-up videos.
Okay.
But I've gotten a pretty good following on TikTok, and so that's what I post the most on, that and Instagram, which is both at Dusty Slay. And then inside those, in my bio, is another link where I have, a link to so if you don't want to go to a website, go to one of those social medias, and then I have a link in the bio that links to my schedule and all sorts of stuff. I do have my show at Zany's on November 11th, Zany's in Nashville, which is a show that I host and headline. And then I usually try to bring in comics that I work with on the road that are really funny, but maybe are not being seen so much right now. So I'm trying to, give them a platform and also, make my show good. So
awesome.
Yeah.
I think you might have redeemed TikTok for me.
Yeah.
So we will actually, we want to be very positive in our show. So you give me a reason to not say as many bad things about TikTok.
Well, this is what I'll say about TikTok is I thought TikTok was the dumbest thing in the world. I never wanted to get on it. And then in March, when I got shut down, I had a friend reach out to me and he goes, you should start posting some stand-up videos on TikTok. And I had an hour of comedy that I recorded that I just wanted to use for social media stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I had like 3 videos and I posted them on TikTok, and one of them instantly jumped to like 300,000 views and I was hooked. And so
Oh, wow.
I've been, this whole time I've been learning to edit better and make better videos. And now I'm kind of trying to film my sets and film crowd work moments and put on TikTok. So,
oh man, by the way, and we sat here and talked about how social media and internet's the devil, but your social media is hilarious. And like
thank you.
The crowd work, the clips you have of the crowd work and stuff are great, perfectly timed and hilarious. Like Steve turned me on to your comedy and I started checking out your Twitter and your Instagram. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is hilarious. So,
thank you.
I mean, yeah.
Because I do love, I mean, I'm not a crowd work comic at all, but I do love that stuff in a way. But it's like, even when fans are like disruptive and rude, I'm still like, I'm happy because what a weird job I have. I used to sell pesticides for a living.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, this is great. So I'm like, who am I to call somebody stupid or get out of the show? And I'm like, I want them to have fun. I want to joke them back into the show.
Well, yeah, and that's what the one I saw for sure was great, because you're going, oh no, is he going to be mean to the person? And then it's like, not mean, it's just funny. It's kind of hey, what's going on over here? And then bringing them into the show. It's hilarious.
I did want them to leave, by the way. I know what I just said, but I did want them to leave because they were up front. They're like a middle-aged couple. They're both wearing football jerseys and they've been drinking all day, clearly, and they're just kind of flirting with each other. And then he's like, I'm about to get laid tonight. And that's why I was like, well, you better get out of here then.
Yeah. That was so good.
Go get laid now, dude.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, my show's good, but hey.
Yeah.
Strike while the iron's hot.
Yeah. I mean, it's a longer clip of me talking to them, but I took out, I took the funniest chunk.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't stop. I was like, listen, you have to look at me now. You have to look at me and listen to me. You get to hang out with each other all the time. I'm not always with you.
That's right.
They probably flamed out that night. That was like the height of their passion.
Yeah.
Win-win. Well, Dusty, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for
best
having
of luck
me.
to you. Stay healthy, and thank you again.
Yeah, thanks you guys. Great to see you. We're having a good time.
Having a good time. Thanks, sir. All right.